Welcome once again to Living in the 21st Century. It's the year 2016, our first show for the year. Today in the studio we have a special guest with us today. His name is Dr. Harold Altvater. He is from Delta 9 Medical, a consultant, and he will be here to speak about medical marijuana, a subject that was once buried, stigmatized, once condemned, but now embraced. Doctor, welcome to Living in the 21st Century.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. What got you into specializing in cannabis, so to speak?
Yeah, a lot of people you'll find that are involved with medical marijuana, it kind of starts with a personal experience that really brings them in. Like most physicians in America, we're really not exposed to cannabis in any other form in our education other than of drug of abuse.
Yes.
And it's associated with numerous deleterious effects that we've been told. I mean, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and there's always been, it was a taboo in society associated with it. So I really didn't think too much of it about it as a medication. Went through my medical school training. It was never mentioned at all as though it existed at the medical school, and it was the University of Vermont. And however, my father, my mother actually passed away after being in a nursing home for about 3 years or so with Alzheimer's disease.
Yes.
And the dementia, and there's a period of sometimes with Alzheimer's that they become extremely active in self-harm.
Yes.
To some degree. And the medications that they had would use would be just so sedating to where there would be no activity, and she was just totally medicated, and it was probably less than ideal for her. It was less than ideal for the family, and it would have been nice if there had been another choice. But even at that time, I didn't really think about cannabis. My father's about 85 years old, and we really work up to the end in my family. And my dad was a farmer in Ohio.
Yes.
And he liked to mow the fields, the grass and stuff, and he was involved in a farm accident where he fell off of a tractor, and the tractor, the nature of the accident was it partially amputated his right leg and broke his back. He really it was very traumatic for him. He was in the field for about 5 or 6 hours before somebody found him. And then he was air transported to a trauma center in Columbus, Ohio. And when I first came to see him, he was so medicated on opiates that he didn't even recognize his own son. Just didn't recognize me. And he mentally, normally, he's totally there. His providers, healthcare providers, through no fault of their own, because they never knew him at baseline, thought that he was fine. But I'm the only child that he had, and had no idea. And
Correct.
And as he started recovery after the surgery and was in the nursing home, and his anxiety dealing with you just lose when you're elderly and you start to lose function. You're really losing the essence of yourself and your self-identity.
That's correct.
And that really affected him. And then I thought, boy, I wish there was a different medication other than the benzodiazepines and antidepressants that they put him on, because those caused a marked change.
Yes. That brought me, I like going on that, touching that section there, because I heard that there are several types of marijuana, and how various types can actually play different roles in relieving pain, in doing such things. Could you really expand a little bit on that?
Sure. Basically, cannabis is the whole plant, the bud of it, the pestle part of the plant that they call the bud, is basically composed of about 482 plus or minus compounds.
Okay.
And out of those, there's one that's called a cannabinoid, and it's a THC, tetrahydrocannabinol. That's the one that makes you high.
Okay.
So all the negative effects that are associated with cannabis come from one out of 480, right? The rest of them have other effects.
Yes.
Now, the THC itself also has medical effects that we could eventually talk about, but it helps with a host of medical conditions. So there are types of cannabis that basically cannabis falls into four broad categories. There are strains that they will call indica strains. Indica strains are used to be morphologically associated with plants with short leaves, stubby leaves, and these plants typically grow around 6 feet, 7 feet or so. And using an indica strain usually results in sedation, profound muscle relaxation. Depending on how the herb is cured, you may indeed get almost narcotic-like or opiate-like pain relief with these particular strains.
Right. Oh, great. There are some things still that bothers me up to this day.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things there is that we have a time, especially back in the early 80s, where marijuana was somewhat stigmatized. And today, government is actually embracing marijuana, not only for the benefits of economic growth, but they are claiming through medical professionals that it is helping people to cure their sicknesses and ailments, etc. But how can society as a whole predetermine whether it is used for recreational purposes or really medical purposes?
Right.
And why can small people, if this is the case, since it's becoming legalized, why can small people use this as a source of earning their own income and selling it to the pharmacies? Why can't they become farmers? What is your intake on that?
Well, cannabis, one thing, it's been used by man for at least 10,000 years. All right, so we've unearthed mummies and stuff in Asia and Southeast Asia, and when you open the containers, the corpse will be surrounded by cannabis flowers. And it's important to realize that those flowers come from female species, right? So, and those are the only ones. A male plant doesn't provide anything that causes a high or any psychogenic effects. So we know that 10,000 years ago, since they have just the buds of female plants around them, that they were indeed using cannabis, and they were using cannabis that altered their sensorium. Okay, and it was so important that they decided to send the prestigious members of their tribes or their clans to the other world surrounded and protected by cannabis. Okay, so we know that. We know at least for 4,000 years, cannabis has been used by mankind as a medicine in traditional herbal societies, which America was very much that up until the 1930s. In the 1930s, about 70% of our medications at that time came from plants. A lot of these plants are found in all 50 states. And cannabis just happened to be one that was in there. It was in over 2,000 different medical preparations in the 1930s. By the time the Tax Act came in 1937, by 1941, all of these were removed from the pharmacopoeia. Physicians would traditionally write for cannabis, not marijuana, because in the medical profession, it was always referred to as cannabis or as hemp, Indian hemp. Marijuana actually was developed by people to use it as a pejorative term in America. They associated marijuana basically with people that were from the south of America, Mexican, Spanish individuals. They associated it with African Americans, and it was always associated with violence.
Okay.
And misogynistic things were attributed. So all these were used to castigate it as something evil in our society, right?
Well, that's true. One of my concerns, though, is that we know for a fact that now marijuana are being made into many things, cookies and so forth. Most college students at some point in their life would probably experiment on it. Any drug can be abused if not used with a medical prescription. My concern with so much new methodologies, whether it's through cookies, whether it's through some other form of ingestion, how can we not be certain that putting it in such commercialized ways for kids to have easy access to can't hinder our society as time go on in terms of overdosing or this kind of stuff.
And those are reasonable concerns. I mean, Earl, you've met my daughter. I have a 16-year-old daughter, so I'm very cognizant of cannabis and young people being exposed to the drug. What I can say about that is there is evidence. In California, they've had medical cannabis since 1996, and there is evidence that anyone would know. Anytime you bring a product to the market, there is abuse, and there is diversion of the drug from people that should be using the medication to others that are using it for an intent that's different than what the manufacturer. Let's look at the opiate crisis that we have right now. Cannabis. The good thing is that if you misuse cannabis, that it is not a lethal drug. Unlike an opiate, you cannot achieve a state where you would be unable to breathe or it would stop your heart. And the reason is that in our brains, the receptors that cannabis acts on are of such a low concentration in our breathing centers that it doesn't affect that system at all. Just because something can't kill you, though, doesn't make it safe.
Exactly.
All right? And indeed, it can affect people's performance. Some people, just like on other drugs, perhaps shouldn't use it. There's a lot of conflicting scientific information out there in terms of there are some studies which I disagree with, but they will show that there's a drop in IQ with individuals that have used marijuana since a young age. However, that drops only 6 points.
So tell me this. I'm a little bit confused between, and probably many others out there, maybe like
There's
myself.
a lot of confusion out there.
I hear cannabis. Is cannabis and marijuana the same thing?
Right.
Or is it a byproduct of marijuana?
Nope. Cannabis and marijuana are the same. Marijuana was a term, there's a couple conspiracy theories that it was developed by basically white men in America to get the drug off the market for one reason or another. That's what that's where that word comes from. Most Americans, we don't even know that. You're never taught this at all, and you just think of marijuana. But if you look at the medical literature and stuff, there was a doctor from the Western called William Shaughnessy from Ireland who in the 1840s, brought over Indian hemp from India when he was there and really looked into using cannabis as a medicine. He was really introduced it to the West and had great success, wrote about it, and physicians kind of learned about it from there. They always refer to it as cannabis. The extracts and products that you see from that time, and there's still examples of it, are clearly labeled cannabis extract or cannabis India extract.
Should you think those helpers, to, especially those who are paralyzed, well, here in Massachusetts, it's legal now. Marijuana is
medically,
legal. Medically speaking. Do you see a person who may have some moral issue with marijuana? Do you see a problem if that person actually giving it to their patients if it is okay with the doctor if they have prescription for it.
So if their caregiver
If
has
their
an
caregiver,
objection
right.
to it themselves, and really, if your role as a caregiver, as a physician, or even a spiritual counselor or any kind of relationship, is you should be focused on doing best for that individual, because at the end of the day, they have to live with themselves.
Of course.
If their decision is that and if you disagree with it strong enough as a provider, then you need to help them find somebody that can do what they want if you can't do it. But you shouldn't really restrict shouldn't really restrict them. And I feel that physicians, and they're probably, in Massachusetts there are about 42,000 physicians. Out of those, there's only 180 of us that are certified to do medical cannabis. Out of that number, active practicing physicians comes down to 20. 20 out of 42,000. So that means that everyone else is either sitting on the fence or on the other side of the fence. And what's frustrating for me as a provider, and you don't know this, but I've had people come to me that with terminal cancer, I certify them so that they can use medical cannabis. I say, you've had this cancer for 2 years, you've been suffering this long, why didn't you come any sooner? Well, because my doctors are against it, and I didn't want to go against them, but now it's just so frustrating and the pain's so bad that I really need care. And of course, they don't want to offend their physicians. A lot of people, especially elderly people in this relationship, they feel that if they question what the doctor's doing, they're challenging them, and they're somehow being disrespectful. And so these people have actually died after I certified them before they could get the license from the state, because our Department of Public Health is so slow that they've never even were able to.
So from a doctor's perspective would you advise any person not to use marijuana unless it is prescribed by a physician?
Well, I actually, because of the lethality of the drug is so low, and because so many people have experience with the drug that they've been used on the black market, it's not a medication that requires, in the majority of individuals, the majority of people in our society, that you would need to have the guidance that you need as a medical patient if you're using it for a recreational purpose. If you're using it to become intoxicated like alcohol, you don't need a doctor to teach you how to drink wine or whiskey. And if that's the effect that you're looking for, marijuana can achieve something, not the same, but a different type of intoxication. If you're looking for just the intoxication or spiritual enhancement that some people look for, and you're not looking for a medical effect, I'm not certain that a physician has to be involved. Actually, I'm pretty certain that they don't have to be involved. But
and would you recommend that those, especially elderly people who seeking assisted suicide to take their lives by taking this whole dosage of pills, would you recommend that it would be much easier to try the usage of marijuana, medical marijuana, prescribed by a doctor, to eliminate that pain opposed to taking their own lives? Or even further, rather than having their kids or family members say, hey, go kill yourself, would you recommend that they should try marijuana as a source to help eliminate some of that physical pain so they can live a little bit longer?
Well, there again, in Massachusetts, we don't allow euthanasia. So as a physician in this state, you're not allowed to participate in that process. Let's just say hypothetically that we were able to, that we're offering with that. Just like I'd mentioned before, and my father's a good case of this. He wanted me to take him home from the nursing home so that he could go into his bedroom where he kept his pistol next to his bed. And because his life was so miserable being in the nursing home and losing his mobility and his freedom in life. So I know firsthand that frustration. And it would be nice to be able to try whatever chemicals that are available in society, whether it be marijuana or any type of therapy if it can make life more bearable and you can get meaning out of it
Yes.
again. If that's what you're looking for, I mean, at some point in our lives, Earl, that you're a young man, maybe you don't understand, people don't understand, there is a point where you're just tired living. They're just tired. You've had enough, you've seen enough, you're okay to go. So I don't think it's nothing to perpetuate things, but when you're elderly, it can help with a lot of symptoms. I do want to talk just a moment about
Sure.
pain control
Sure.
because that's important.
Okay.
Marijuana helps certain types of pain. It helps pain that falls in a category called neuropathic pain. This is pain that people get from like diabetes or some nerve injuries where they'll get a burning or an aching or just a constant pain either in their hands, or if you had a nerve injury in your plexus, you might have an ongoing problem. It doesn't help. So it's very effective, almost to the level, if not equal to or exceeding pharmaceutical compounds such as Lyrica and gabapentin. Those are brand names that I'm using. The other type of pain, let's say if you get hit in the shoulder with a baseball, or if you have low back pain from your arthritis and the stuff, it helps with that type of pain, but it is not effective, as effective as an opiate for that type of pain. However, you're able to use a much lower level of opiates or non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like aspirin, Tylenol, or ibuprofen, because it supplements, it augments their effects. My patients describe that cannabis allows them to have a higher level of function, and they're able to work, get more accomplished, even though the pain's there. It just kind of puts it aside. So your functional level goes up.
Okay.
What I've observed I've been doing this for about 3 years, and about 60 to 70% of my patients by observation that had used opiates or were using opiates over the course of a year, they typically have a 10% or 20% decrease in their weight. Okay. Despite everybody thinks that if you smoke marijuana, you're going to be munching on pizzas and snacks all the time. What actually happens in these individuals is that their level of activity increases, their opiate doses tend to go down, and they become more engaged with society and their surroundings around them. And that was one of the, if I was surprised about anything doing this specialty, that was it. That it really helps with weight loss.
Right. So just to ask you briefly though, what really made you think that now in this 21st century, that government nationwide really turning their attentions on legalizing marijuana, not just only for medical purposes, but what really is the bottom line? Is it for medical purposes or is it really for economic purposes? Well, what do you think?
Well, as you know, our federal government really hasn't made any movement on this. It's still illegal across our entire country, all our provinces and everything we own. It's a federal felony, and that's even with one joint. There's no exclusions at all. States themselves have been able to make exceptions where individuals can use it for medical or recreational usage. This movement has come about through basically, what moves America, since you're not a Native American. It probably moves where you're from also. What moves something is money. Outside investors, people outside of the cannabis industry have come in, they've looked at it, they've assessed how much money that can be made on this, and it's something that they want to bring to the population. Last year, the number that came out last year was $5.3 billion was made directly from cannabis sales or cannabis-related industries. And that's in the United States. And that's with a very small percentage of active exchange of cannabis.
Well, we are closing up on time pretty shortly, but I want to ask this one more question. Very important. Do you think as cities legalize marijuana to sell, do you think those prisoners who from that city should be set free as they go by. So, for example, if, let's say, Newton had people locked up for the possession of marijuana and they are serving time, as that city legalize it.
I
and so
understand.
do-
So
right,
retroactively, should all these people
exactly.
get lost? I will tell you what, in the legalization issue, it will be passed in Massachusetts next year, sorry.
Okay.
Woo, move back in time.
Okay.
But next year it will be passed where it will be legalized by our referendum in the state. The state knows this is going to occur. They're trying to figure out how to handle the situation and to set laws to make it safe for society as they see fit. In terms of legalization for myself, as a physician, I'm against legalization because we really don't need another intoxicant in our society. If you need cannabis for medical purposes in the state of Massachusetts, it's available for you. All you have to do is see a physician. If you want to use it on a recreational basis, it's decriminalized. There's a $100 fine if you get caught. Chances are you're not going to get caught. As long as you have less than an ounce, you're able to use marijuana. So it's effectively here right now. I will, however, vote in favor of legalization because our criminal justice system doesn't handle this subject that well.
Okay.
And you know, as a man of color, you know that disproportionately minorities are slammed for this.
Absolutely.
And it's just a different situation if you or I right now went to Wellesley or anywhere else and you got caught with marijuana and I got caught with marijuana based on nothing else other than the color of our skin, what that outcome is going to be.
Absolutely.
That's the reality. That needs to stop.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Harold Alvater, for really educating us and bringing us to disclosure right now on marijuana to some degree.
Great.
And we are in the final seconds. So to all those out there who have listened to this program, I hope very much that it was nourishable to you. And I want to say thank you very much for tuning in once again to Living in the 21st Century. Dr. Harold, again, thank you.
Well, thanks. It was great being here.
Thank you very much. So to all those at home, God bless. Bye-bye.